orientation is being recorded for those who can't join us tonight. I hope the new year is off to a good start, and welcome to American University on behalf of the number of people who will be joining us tonight and everybody else at American University. My name is Kyo Kim. I am the Executive Director of our Center for Teaching, Research, and Learning, and I will serve as the host for this orientation event. So you will hear a lot more about CTRL and what we all do later on. And so what I want to do is go ahead and introduce Karen Baylor, who is an Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. And so Karen, please turn your microphone on and come on down, so to speak.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kyo. It's great to be with everyone this evening on a Tuesday night and on a Wednesday night. Actually, it's important to know what day of the week it is. That was a quiz. I do want to pass along regrets from my boss, Monica Jackson, who is the Deputy Provost and Dean of Faculty. She really wanted to be with you tonight, but is not able to do that. And so I'm here just to really pass along her welcome. It's very exciting to have new colleagues at American University, and we understand so deeply the very special gifts and contributions that adjunct faculty make to this university. We are so lucky to be in Washington, D.C., where there is access to a very broad and deep pool of professionals, people who have different sort of mixes of academic and professional experience, who love students and who want to be in the classroom. And so we really appreciate you being here. We know that it enriches greatly the lives of our students and the learning experiences of our students, but also of our, all of our departments and the faculty community and culture within our departments. So I want to say thank you. The practical sort of nuts and bolts things that I know are on everyone's minds, I think will be addressed. We'll see if Bill Leogrand is going to be here, but there was one little sort of nuts and bolts thing that I was asked to mention. And this is going to vary for each of you depending on when you get your AU email address, which then will mean that you also have an opportunity you have a password so that you can log into what's known as the My AU portal on the American University website. When you do that, we are asking all of our faculty, adjuncts, term faculty, tenure track, tenured faculty, everyone is being asked and really required to complete a training that is associated with Title IX regulations and our commitment to inclusive excellence at AU. The title of this program is Get Inclusive. That's the name of the company, the vendor that produces this course. I took it a few months ago and actually found it quite interesting that it uses scenarios, sort of very highly realistic scenarios in order to walk us through the things that we need to understand. So please just keep an eye out for information about that. Anyone who already can log into my AU portal can find it by going to part of that site that's known as A Successful U. And what I might do too, Kyo, is when I finish here, I can load a little memo into the chat here so that people have a copy of the PDF of this document. Again, I would note that, if you don't have your login information yet, don't worry, it will come. You can do this later. You don't have to take this training right away. So I'll stop there, and I don't know if anybody has any questions for me before we move on to Bill Leogrand, or if you wanted to move along, Kyo.
So Bill is not yet here, and so I see Noha has a question, and so feel free, Noha, to either come on camera or without the camera to ask your question.
Good evening, everyone. So since I'm already like a PhD candidate at American University Economic Department, so I already have access to the AU portal, but I don't know exactly which file she wants me to or wants us to have access to. So is it possible to repeat the information, please?
Yes, certainly. And you know what I'll do, Noha, that I think will be most useful is multitasking isn't always my strong suit. I will put this PDF in the chat for this meeting. So it will be there, and it has the complete instructions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
Are there any other questions from folks here?
Yeah,
Okay,
we could, if you wanted, Kia, we could also talk a little bit about the, the collective bargaining agreement, or
yeah, I think so. I was going to suggest that, Karen, since you have that expertise as well.
Sure, happy to do that. So as many of you know, but possibly not all of you, adjunct faculty at American University are covered by a union agreement with Service Employees International Union, a very large union, international union, in fact. This has been true, can't remember exact. Do you remember when the union agreement started? It's been at least, I think, 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, it's been about that.
Yeah, probably about 5 or 6 years. And recently, the agreement was renegotiated, and that document is available to you if you go to the Dean of Faculty's website. In fact, what I do is I just go into Google and I type Dean of Faculty, American University. You will find a link there. In fact, there's a section on the Dean of Faculty's website for different, it says information for faculty. And if you use that drop-down menu, you go to adjunct faculty, and there are a wide variety of resources available there for you to check out, one of which is a link to the collective bargaining agreement, so that you can see that information there. The vast majority of our adjuncts are covered by that agreement. The exception would be people who are full-time staff who are teaching sort of on the side as adjuncts. And you will see in the agreement, there are tables that list minimum pay scales and other kinds of elements. And so this is important as a sort of action point for all of you, because within the next couple of weeks, you will be hearing from the Human Resources Department at AU, who will ask you to indicate whether you wish to join the union as a member of the union, or I didn't do my homework in preparation for this, Kyo. I'm trying to think what the term is for the other status that you can choose, where you don't have to join the union. You'll still be covered by the collective bargaining agreement, but you'll pay a small fee associated with that, but you don't have to be a full member. So when that email comes along, it will contain full instructions and a full explanation of what your choices are. So please be on the lookout for that, and be sure to complete that. It's quite important, because we find that American University wants very much and has quite a good record of staying in compliance with the things that the union asks us to do. And this is one of the things that they ask us to do, to make sure that they know who is their membership early on in the semester. So in terms of next steps, that's really the main one that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, we can also pause here and see if there are any questions from you all relating to the CBO or other aspects of your appointment at American University. I see a question from Nan.
Yeah, hi. If we are a member of the SEIU at another institution, do we need to join it here as well? Do you know?
That's interesting. This came up about 6 months ago, and I think you're going to need to ask Bill Leogrand that question.
Okay.
Thank you for you're not alone in that.
Okay. Thank you.
And Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are also some exemptions for those who are employed by the federal government and other organizations, correct?
That is exactly right. Yes, Keo, thank you. So there are some organizations that essentially do not allow their employees to join unions. And there are government agencies at the federal level and at the state level for which that is true. In fact, most of them probably would be. But in addition, World Bank and some of the large international organizations fit under that category as well. And so if you do have an employer before making your designation with respect to the AU union, you probably want to talk to your boss at your workplace about that. Check into that.
Other questions or comments? All right, so we're going to pause a little bit here because we're running ahead of schedule, surprisingly. And so I'm happy to field some questions while we have our next element, which is the Inclusive Excellence Plan. So Merlin, do you have anything to add to this conversation regarding adjunct unions and other employment matters?
Yes, hi, how are you, everyone? My name is Marilyn McClure, and I'm the HR Faculty Administration team. And I see a lot of familiar names, so I'm sure that I've spoken to you either via Teams or email during your adjunct appointment and pre-employment and onboarding process. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about that. Most of you are through the onboarding process now, but if there's any questions that you have about the Equifax packet that you've received, and then the I-9 verification that needs to be done in person, please let me know. Also, any direct deposit questions that you have, if you're running into any issues, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I also wanted to point out that I know that I notice a few names for adjuncts that are out of area. Your onboarding happens through NextSource, which is a little bit different. You should have been reached out by somebody with NextSource to complete the onboarding, the I-9 and direct deposit with them. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about that.
So Megan, I see your thumbs up. Is that a question or just appreciation for the answer? Just a good answer. Oh, wonderful. Good job, Merlin.
Of course, yeah, thanks. And of course, for those of you that are local and need to complete your I-9 verification, that is something that needs to be done right away. There is a deadline for that for us to be in compliance. It is a federal legal form. And no appointment is necessary. You do need to go into our HR office, which is located 3201 New Mexico, so right by Wagshaw's and Chef Jeff's on the 3rd floor. We're open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So please stop on in. The front desk is there, happy to assist you. Important to note, though, you do need to complete your Equifax online documents first before coming into the office for the I-9.
So Erica, not to put you on the spot, and so feel free to continue your question offline, but are there some general issues that we might be able to hash out here? This is a comment from Erica Simmons about onboarding.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. What was it?
So one of our adjunct faculty members is having some onboarding issues.
Oh, okay.
Would you need an ID to get into class? Some of the classes are controlled by an access key, and you can use your ID to do that. And some of the classrooms are just simply open, and so it will depend on that space. So Marlon, there's a question about, do we need to bring the I-9 form with them?
No, you don't need to bring any paper form with you when you come to HR. As long as you've completed the Equifax online, the last pop-up, or I believe it's an email that comes up that says you've completed it, welcome. When you come to the HR office, they can pull that from the system, and just make sure you bring the original documents, unexpired, from the list of acceptable documents that will be provided in that last, you finish screen that comes up.
And so there was a related question, Marilyn, about how they access the Equifax package online.
Okay, so that will come to you in an email. Actually, it's a set of 2 emails that comes. One, it has the login credentials, and the second one is your password information. So if you have not completed this and you have not received the emails, you need to reach out to me. I'm going to type my email address in the chat right now, so that way I can find out why you haven't received it, and to make sure to resend it to you right away. Make sure we have the correct email address. That's sometimes an issue. Oh, I do see the chat now here. So somebody didn't receive their password. So that's also, a technical issue. So if you only got one of the emails and not the second one, that's something I can help with as well. But yes, that's something that comes via email. Please make sure you check your spam folders. It does come from Equifax, but the address does say Human Resources with AU, and it is a set of 2 emails.
So there's a question about how do I know where my classroom is? That information should be available through Blackboard if you log into your Blackboard. I'm sorry. Log into your LMS, you should be able to see where those classrooms are. Sometimes it takes a while for those classrooms to be assigned, and so you have to sort of check regularly. Canvas. So we moved away from Canvas a few years ago from Blackboard to Canvas recently, and so that information should reside with your Canvas account.
What I've done sometimes too is to go into the AU website. If you go into academics, then you can go to the schedule of classes and you can search on your class. In fact, that's typically how I find my classroom. And then there are maps of the campus that are available online as well. If you happen to be located in a building that, and the code for the building is unfamiliar to you, you can really just Google American University campus map, and that'll come up for you there.
Yeah, so circling back to the question about needing access to those classrooms, most buildings on campus are open typically past 10 p.m. and you typically don't need sort of a key access to enter the main buildings. And within those buildings, the rooms will typically remain open until those after hours have passed. So you should be fine. But if you ever get into a situation where you are locked out of your room, you can always call campus police and they will come and open your space for you. And I think that's I will get you the number to the campus police and put it in the chat box. And it's a 4-digit number. How can we provide direct deposit info? Marilyn, do you know how that's done?
Yes, it is important that your onboarding documents are complete in order to set up your direct deposit. It is all done through the AU portal. There, I'm going to copy and paste a few instructions on the chat here on how to find that link there. But everything is electronic and payroll will receive it. Did that go through?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's now if there is any issues, if the link gives you an error message, then reach out to me. I also just sent my email address because that may mean that your tax information hasn't processed from your onboarding, or perhaps your onboarding isn't complete.
So I'm going to put a pause here so that we can move on to the next part of our orientation. And we can always circle back at the end of this series of presentations to address any other questions that you might have. And so feel free to hold on to them or put them in the chat box, and we'll try to synchronously or asynchronously try to address them as they pop up. So thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Karen, for
thank you,
joining
Keo.
us this evening.
Of course.
And Keo, I just wanted to mention, I did find that PDF that is associated with the training program for Title IX and anti-discrimination. So you can see that in the chat.
Yep. So for all of you, please download those documents, take note of those links and email addresses, because as you know, when we close this window, all that information will sort of disappear. We will have this recording available for future, if you want to return to them in the future. But sometimes it's easier just to have those notes with you before you leave. And so for the next part of the new faculty.
And Kehoe, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say that I was going to stay on for a couple minutes just to make sure I didn't miss any chat messages.
Oh, wonderful.
But afterwards, thank you. I will step away once I'm done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Marilyn. So it is. So we want to move on to the next part of the orientation, and to do that, I want to introduce Brian McGowan, a colleague of mine in our teaching center. And so I will ask him to come on screen, or you are already on screen, to take over and to talk about inclusive excellence and inclusive pedagogy. Welcome, Brian. All right, we're not hearing you, Brian, just in case.
Here we go. Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. Take two. I tell you, technology can be your best friend or your worst enemy. All right, there we go. Y'all can hear me? Thumbs up. Can you see the perfect? Good evening and welcome. I'm Brian McGowan. I serve in a dual capacity here at AU. I am an associate professor in our School of Education. I teach in our doctoral program in policy leadership. And I'm also one of the associate directors here in the Center for Teaching, Research, and Learning. I am in my fourth year. I tell you, it feels like I just got here yesterday, but I'm in my fourth year here at AU. And in the interest of time, we'll jump right in. But this session, I title Inclusive Teaching and Pedagogy, Considerations for New Faculty. And so the goal in this short session is just to get you thinking, and I'm going to assume that many of you already do many of the things I'm going to mention. So this could be a preaching to the choir type of thing. But I think what's important here is that inclusive teaching is very important to us. Inclusive teaching is good teaching. And also wanting to give you a sense of some of the resources we have here in CTRL to support your teaching efforts. So with that being said, I also would like to have a little bit of engagement. And so here we go. In the chat, I put a question here. What does inclusive teaching mean to you? If you can type in the chat, if a few people would love to come on camera, that would be great. But let's just spend a little bit of time answering this question. What does inclusive teaching mean to you? Let's get some engagement going. See already the preaching to the choir, because the slide coming has some of these words on it. Let's see: compassion, respect, and empathy for all students. And the word all students will unpack that. Accessibility, right? No one gets left behind. In order to do that, there has to be some deliberate nature to this work, integrating the students into the learning, all right? As individuals are typing in the chat, can someone come on camera and speak to this question? Just one person.
Yeah, feel free to raise your hands and we can recognize you.
Who's going to be the one person? Excuse me. You know, I'm okay with silence. Christy, thank you for taking one for the team. Oh, okay, that's what I saw first, Christy. And then China, I think you wanted to comment. So Christy and China will be our two. Christy, please.
Sorry, apologies. I'm working from home today, so apologies for the background. Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Jones. I'm a new adjunct faculty with the School of International Studies at American University. For me, inclusive teaching really means, well, for me, in some ways, it's decolonizing my syllabus, making sure that I'm touching on a lot of different authors and documentation from a lot of different, a variety of sources. I focus very much on my syllabus with decolonization and making sure, especially in the area that I teach, which is peace building, looking at a variety of different scholars who are doing that teaching, not just Western Eurocentric scholars, but looking at scholars from around the world, making sure that I'm identifying scholars from various backgrounds, whether socioeconomic, various gender identities, making sure that those are included within my syllabus to ensure that students are realizing that there are all types of scholars with all types of perspectives and all types of backgrounds, and making sure those scholars are specifically included in my syllabus.
Thank you for that.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is China Dickerson. I included in the chat encouragement and valuing of diversity of perspective and thoughts. And I made sure, or I should say within the last few years, become recently understanding of it not just being diversity of race or religion or sexual orientation, or because what you look like or how you identify might not be how your community identifies or views or particular, so it's important to understand that even two white people, one from New York City and one from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, although they're both white, they have diversity of perspective and of thought. So it's important to also not see folks as monoliths, even within their assumed community. And so encouraging their participation, but also valuing it.
Thank you both for coming on camera and offering those perspectives. Very important. In addition, just to lift up a couple comments here in the chat before we move on, the whole notion of decolonizing your syllabus, I really appreciate that. And also what I'm hoping here in this session as well is that you all can learn from one another. Someone had mentioned co-creation of knowledge. I think that's very important, where you're creating environments where learning can be co-created. You as an instructor bring expertise, but everyone brings expertise into the learning environment. And so designing in those types of ways. But in the spirit of time, let me move on. I think it's also important, and this could have been a very long slide, but I think as we think about inclusive teaching, it's also important to understand the context and climate that we're teaching within, right? And so like we, particularly in this environment now that COVID has been with us for a while now, right? And so, but new variants are popping up. What does that mean as we think about design? This quote unquote return to normal, right? People are still using that language, like what is normal these days, right? And so again, thinking about what does that mean in the context of it? I think the centering of student wellness and mental health is something that we also have to think about, not just our students in our learning environments, but also us as instructors in the environment. I think a lot of times when we talk about prioritizing mental health and being aware of that, we don't always think about our own mental health as it relates to that. So I think it's important to center that and just understanding the racial and political climate that we're in, right? And so these are things that as you're thinking about some of the strategies that you employ, you can't do that void of some of the contemporary, what I like to call challenges and opportunities, right? Inclusive teaching. So there is no one universal definition, but one that I do like and use is that it involves designing learning environments that are one, equitable, right? Where all students have the opportunity to reach their potential, and be welcoming in that they foster a sense of belonging. So equity, belonging, welcoming, right? Like when I am from the onset of my course, right, to the delivery, every aspect of the course, these things need to be thought through and should be deliberate in many ways. What is inclusive teaching? So 2 points really quickly, and many of these were already echoed in the chat, so not to stay here too long, but it's a pedagogy that strives to serve the needs of all students. I think it's important. I think of this trickle-up approach. If you are designing in particular with individuals who tend to be marginalized or minoritized, if you are thinking about those individuals from the design and from the onset, everyone benefits. And so thinking of that approach can be very helpful, and thinking about different modalities. So I know for me, it's really thinking sometimes like outside of, a lot of times when you think about teaching, particularly for folks who haven't taught a lot, you tend to emulate models that have been presented to you or in my program, my faculty taught in these ways. And it's so important to like get beyond that and to think more broader about your praxis. So a couple of words here, and I mentioned I was go back to this, but it's the centering of students, right? It's the hard work, it's the people. So thinking about my classroom, people should feel like they belong, that they are engaging, should be flexible, right? And so thinking about even your policies and procedures, like within your syllabus, right? Some of your policies, they should be flexible. Transparency. What are ways that we can make connections in my course? Having empathy, students feeling empowered. So these are some words, but ultimately it's the centering of students. And this requires you to teach beyond your content. We are content experts, right? We bring expertise, but it's so important to teach beyond that. Really quickly, and many of you who knows me, this is one of my go-to pieces. In the Chronicle of Higher Education, a few years back, I think maybe 2017 or 18, Kevin Gannon wrote a piece titled "The Case for Inclusive Teaching." Some of you may be familiar with Kevin Gannon's book. And we were fortunate to be able to bring Kevin Gannon here a couple of years ago to speak to us. But talking about the case for inclusive teaching and that we need to place pedagogy at the center of our efforts. And again, that good teaching is inclusive teaching. It's not this extra thing that you do, like I teach and then I'm inclusive. Like inclusive teaching is good teaching, right? But within this piece, and what I appreciate is that inclusive teaching cuts across 3 domains. One being course design. So when you're thinking about course prep, the decisions that you make throughout that process and making sure that you are catering your teaching to with the consideration of diverse perspectives. So you're thinking about your modality, your delivery, but you're thinking about inclusive teaching in design in every aspect of that process. Inclusive teaching values discernment. So in thinking about positionality, like how am I positioned as an instructor in this course? Like what are my biases? What are my assumptions? Like you're thinking about those in the design process and throughout the course delivery. Participation and tailoring approaches. So how am I accounting for participation? What does that look like? So it's this notion of I have a sense of discernment as I am engaging in my course activities. And then it values a sense of belonging. And so people should feel like they belong in your course, right? And so what am I deliberately doing to create environments that foster belonging? And active learning strategies is one way to get at that, but also just the whole notion of connections. And so he has a book around it, but I love this Chronicle article. It's very short and to the point. And so inclusive teaching values design, discernment, and belonging. Again in 2018. See, if I would have clicked a little bit longer, I could have gotten the year right up front. But anyway, so continuing to move on. And a couple of other things that just the benefits of inclusive teaching, like why do we do this, right? And it's all about the connection and engagement, right? And so thinking about your course, it may be easier to do this than others, depending on your content and what you're teaching, but it's not an excuse to not try it. I think that sometimes it's like, well, in my discipline, in my field, I can't do it. No, you can. You may have to think a little differently around that, right? And also don't feel like, another caveat I would like to make is that don't feel like you're alone, right? Like even though I'm the instructor of record for my course, don't feel like you have to like design by yourself, right? Like there are people on campus that can help you. There's also colleagues within your fields and disciplines. So just always think around that too. But benefits of inclusive teaching, that you'll be prepared for those hot moments, right? Like how many times have we been teaching and things don't always go according to plan, right? But when you create like an environment of inclusivity, that's brave in nature, you can have those hot moments in your teaching, right? You're teaching content that connects to students that's relevant to them. So how am I taking my content and making it relevant, that they can see themselves in the lessons, that they can see themselves in the curriculum, and creating an environment that allows students to feel comfortable in the space, that they actually feel comfortable contributing and voicing their ideas. And this is something when we think about, the term safe space, I want to create safe space. And I would just challenge people to, instead of thinking about safety, we're thinking about bravery. Like, how can we promote bravery within our courses and moving away from the concept of safety, where individuals feel brave to engage and be in the space, right? I know I'm saying a lot. I talked about that last piece. And the last piece I would like to talk about around inclusive teaching, because I genuinely don't think you can have a conversation about inclusivity without thinking about bias. And so our own implicit biases, which are attitudes or stereotypes that affect an individual's understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. So again, this is us as instructors. Well-intentioned people can cause harm. I think that's important, and I'll repeat that. We can all have good intentions, but sometimes well-intentioned people can also cause harm. So I think it's important to be cognizant of that. I like to quote a study that happened in 2016 at the Yale Child Study Center. There was a conference where they had pre-service teachers come to a conference, and they were showing these videos to teachers, and they asked them to look for problematic behaviors in these videos. And so they were, in these videos were based around a binary, but there were Black boys and girls, white boys and girls in the videos interacting with one another, and they asked teachers to look for problematic behaviors. What the researchers noticed in this study is that the teachers were deliberately zeroing in on Black children, Black boys in particular, looking for problematic behaviors, and didn't even realize they were doing it, right? And so when we think about the bias that we hold, it's not just a police problem, right? Bias in policing was a narrative that, you know, particularly in our current climate, it's a preschool problem, right? And I think it's important for us to acknowledge our biases in the learning space. And it doesn't just play out in schools and policing, it also plays out in our colleges and universities. And so I like to offer that example because we may have our own biases and assumptions, the ways that we may feel about certain groups of students or abilities to perform. Those things can subconsciously seep into the ways that we engage with people. They may show up in ways in our course design if we're not accounting for our biases and assumptions. And so I wanted to really quickly, because I know I had 20 minutes. So they're just getting you thinking alongside one another, how individuals are thinking about inclusive teaching, and also thinking about it's the entire process from the design and delivery throughout. A couple of things that could be helpful to you, and again, you are not alone in this. We have lots of resources in our Center for Teaching, Research, and Learning that can facilitate and help you with your teaching. One being teaching consultations. We have a number of people, our teaching and learning team, but we have expertise throughout that if you would like to talk with someone about an idea that's very formative or something that's going on in your course, or I did something and I don't think it worked, and giving you feedback. We have people in our center who will be more than happy to talk with you in terms of consultations. We also offer a resource that our Inclusive Pedagogy Faculty Fellows Program. We have about 3 to 4 faculty every year that we bring in, and actually, so stay tuned, you know, as faculty, because there may be opportunities to get involved in this work. But our IP fellows are available to faculty if you want to, you know, run ideas by them, or something happened in your course and you want someone outside of like your unit to engage with around some teaching opportunities and challenges. See the IP fellows as a resource. On our website, we have a DEI resources, so feel free to comb through those and check those out. We also have programming throughout the year that's dedicated to inclusive pedagogy. So there's a series that we run. You may see programs rooted in a series or outside of a series. We have May workshops, and I know Anna's going to talk more about this, so I don't want to double dip too much, but we have lots of opportunities that you can get some of the IP specific programming. And also, depending on the semester, we have a variety of faculty learning communities that you can also be in community with other faculty in other disciplines to think and learn alongside one another. And so stay tuned for some of our faculty learning community offerings. And I'll leave you with these 3 questions that you may want to think about. Is how can you better understand and affirm the attributes and social identities of your learners that they bring to your courses? So thinking about the people in your space is very important. What can you do at the beginning, middle, and end of your course to make students feel welcome? right? Like we say that I want you to feel welcome, but what are you deliberately doing to create that environment? And how would you respond if asked what inclusive teaching meant to you? So if your students did ask you that, and I wanted to start with that question, because I think it's important to just understand that. But beyond all of those pieces, I am Brian McGowan, Associate Director and Associate Professor here at AU. And thank you for allowing me to be on the agenda today. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. So there was a question in the chat about
Okay.
what a hot moment could be. So can you sort of talk us through a hot moment and how, and this is one of many ways I think that could be used. And so, Brian?
Yes. So question being, so sorry. Oh, an example of a hot moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, when you're teaching, so me personally, I teach a lot of courses around like DEI issues. But when the students disagree, right? So not even within the concept of DEI, but when students are disagreeing around some concept in your course, and if the environment hasn't been set in terms of like ground rules or how people should interact in the classroom space, students may say things that, or they may use language or they may offend and oppress, and it can really create a moment where students in the space, it can disrupt, right? And so those hot moments, I tell people, if you are thinking about inclusive teaching throughout the process, you're doing things at the beginning of your course, some norming, some modeling that can help. And again, it's no perfect science, but the more you're thinking about these things on the front end and you're creating these environments that are welcoming, that are affirming, that are brave for students, these hot moments may feel different versus when that hot moment just happens and you haven't done anything deliberately to create an environment for your course. It can disrupt and cause harm. So that would be a broad example. I can give you specific examples of hot moments I've had in my career, or we can even open it up. I'm sure if you've been teaching for a while, you've had a hot moment in your career, right? But it's important to learn from those moments when you have them. Thank you for
Thank you again, Brian. And so my responsibility here, in addition to hosting, is to talk very briefly about the resources available through our teaching center. And Brian did a wonderful job summarizing some of those resources that we do make available for all faculty. And so there's nothing that we differentiate for adjunct or contractual term faculty with other faculty who teach for American University. We do make some accommodations for the special roles that you all play as adjuncts. For example, you have regular daytime jobs, many of you. And so we also are mindful in terms of how we provide programming. We will record as many of our programming as possible and put them online. So if you want to access them, you can beyond those regular times when those events happen. We are also consciously and intentionally creating events that are live streamed after hours, so to speak, so that we can have synchronous participation from at least some of the adjunct faculty who have a bandwidth to be a participant in some of those events. And so we will try our best to be inclusive as much as possible in the work that we do. A lot of the work that we do can be done and are done remotely. And so from attending workshops to making appointments with one of our instructional support team, our teaching and learning specialists who can walk through or help you tweak or reimagine some of your coursework and assignments, those can be done remotely. And those appointments can also be scheduled after hours. And so don't feel like you need to constrain your interaction with us during the typical 9 to 5 hours. We are flexible and we want to make sure that whatever resources that we offer are also available to all of you. And that is part of our commitment to accessibility and inclusivity and equity. We are talking about lots of different things. I'm sure some of you are overwhelmed, and some of you, this may be the first time you are teaching. And so I'm sure some of the questions running through your mind is, oh my gosh, how do I do all the things that Brian said we should be doing? Take heed. This is a process and it'll take time to work on your teaching. What I will say, though, is some of the things that we do talk about, thinking about being inclusive, how we design our tests and assignments, how we design our courses can help you huge amounts of time down the road. Mm-hmm. And so if you invest a little bit of time up front to be very intentional about what and how you teach, it will save you time over the course of the semester. And so if you have the capacity, if you have the time, I will recommend a couple of things. One is to attend the Ann Farron Conference, which starts tomorrow. Ann Farron Conference is in its 34th year at American University, where we bring together upwards of 500 faculty members from AU to talk about teaching, as well as other issues related to our work at AU. And so in addition to the teaching piece, there's also the research support piece that we offer. And so if you have some research projects that you are also interested in keeping going, we can provide support for that as well. And so what I would encourage you to is click on the two links, american.edu/CTRL, and all the resources that we offer, and to take advantage of them. You don't have to do it between now and next Tuesday when classes begin, but really be intentional in coming back to this space to figure out what resources are available and to think about how you might incorporate them into the work that you'll be doing over the course of this coming semester. There are lots of tips and tricks and skills that you can build into your courses. One of the places I think all of you should visit is the syllabus template. If my experience is any indication, somebody probably handed you a syllabus and said, hey, teach this. Definitely look at that, but also go to our syllabus template or syllabus guideline page, because there are lots of language and resources that you can simply cut and paste. You don't have to acknowledge us in any way. You can take whatever resources that we offer, cut and paste it into your document and distribute it to your students, right? And this goes to the idea that you want to set sort of the boundaries, the norms of the way you are going to teach and the expectation for those students. And you want to do that before something weird happens. And so you can always refer back to the document and say, hey, this is what we sort of agreed to, at least in terms of the course design. And so this is what I'm going to try to stick to as an issue of equity and fairness to other students. And so please take advantage of those resources. And if some of those things don't make sense to you and you don't know how to incorporate it into your teaching, but you really want to because it sounds really cool, you can make a in-person or remote appointment with one of our teaching and learning specialists, and they can help you one-on-one. A real live person, we won't put you on hold. We will take some information about what you're interested in doing and match you up with a teaching and learning specialist who can best help you address whatever questions that you might have. And so I will stop there because I suspect that instead of just droning on about all the things that we do, it might be better and more efficient to answer questions that might be on the top of your mind and try to work through them this way. And so I'll stop and ask for questions. And we can sit in a little bit of silence while we think about them. All right, so Lindsay will add a link to taking in consultation. Actually, if you go to the long link that I provided, the second one right after american.edu CTRL, if you click on that, you'll see additional links for making those consultation appointments with either a teaching and learning specialist or even a research related kind of consultations as well. And so that's the first thing. If you go to resources for faculty, you'll see all of those things there. Anybody thinking about ChatGPT? If you are, we are in the middle of developing a guidance for all faculty. If you're not aware of what ChatGPT is, it is an AI that anybody can sign up for to answer questions, generic questions, and it will spit back at you some relatively interesting answers. And so, if you're putting out assignments that ask generic questions, it's quite possible for these students to go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want an answer for this question that my faculty asked me, and use that. Obviously, this is an academic integrity violation. And those kinds of things are the kinds of resources that you would find on the syllabus template. And we will also provide for all faculty. And this will go out as an email to help sort of curtail the impact of the emerging AI technology, which is going to get better, and how we might be able to deal with them, and in fact, use them to our advantage with our teaching. In terms of how we check for that, there are some tools for checking for our answers that are created by the AI. But the best way to address them is to think about how do we create our assignments in a way that they are specific to the course that we are teaching, and how do we make them reflect on particular prompts and other parts of the materials that we use in our class. And so if you can make your question specific to the course, the students themselves, and the current environment, the value of AI becomes less and less, right? They don't have that capacity to be reflective and to create these sort of nuanced arguments and nuanced answers to generic questions. And thank you for sharing that resource, Brian.
Yeah.
So that is one way to do it. That is sort of a heavy-handed and very time-consuming way to do that, because you don't want to be cutting and pasting these things into that resource, right? You want to just use that information and address it right at the root, which is creating assignments that really require them to think about the answer. So the AIC, or the academic integrity violation, there's some language in our syllabus template guide about how to deal with those things. Those are typically handled beyond the class. Once you suspect an AIC violation, so you see two assignments with very similar answers, your obligation as a faculty member is not to address those generally, but simply to let your department chair know that you suspect there's a case of academic integrity violation, and allow the process that is instituted within the unit, that is the school or department, to let that carry out. We discourage faculty from adjudicating or figuring out what to do unless you believe that it is sort of a mistake and there's an opportunity to learn from that mistake. There's a teachable moment, and you don't believe that the violation is severe, then you can use that as a teachable moment. But generally, you should reach out to your department chair to say, hey, I have a suspected case of AIC violation. What do you think I should do? I hope that answers your question. Any other questions or thoughts before you head into teaching in a couple of days? We also have lots of recordings that might help you think about some of those hints and tips and other skills that you might want to sort of develop over the course of the semester. Yeah, so you should be reaching out to your department chair if you have a suspected case of academic integrity violation. LASA. I don't know what that refers to.
I think you just said we have LASA reporting. That's what it sounded like to me. LASA reporting. I don't know exactly what you said. I didn't just catch that word.
Yeah, I don't recall. But if it's specific to the AIC discussion, lots of recordings of that. Okay. We also have recordings of past events that you can also listen to while you're driving or cooking or doing something else. And so you don't have to be in front of your screen to access some of those resources that we offer.
Okay, thank you. I missed that. I'm like, what was that? Okay, lots of recordings. Thank you so much, guys.
And so you will the other sort of hint or suggestion or recommendation that I would offer is, I know that you'll be getting lots of emails from your department chair, from the college or school, or from the president, to you name it. Spend a few minutes to just quickly glance through them. Don't simply ignore them, because they will hold nuggets of information that will make your life easier, and in some cases fun. And so it is a lot to ask, but quickly glance through and just keep those things in the back of your mind. Some of the events that are being advertised are wonderful opportunities for networking, connecting with other colleagues and members of the community. And ultimately, that is one of the ways that you can enrich your experience at American University, making those personal connections and seeing other people, seeing other things that are happening, and in some cases, creating opportunities for yourself to engage in some of the work that's being talked about. And that's, I think, to me, that's the best part of being part of a university, all the great things that are happening. Yes, it can be overwhelming, but I think if you approach this strategically and with that spirit of engagement, I think you will get lots and lots of out of this experience as well.